Hello guys, today I'm going to show you how to make this in a step-by-step tutorial all the way up to landing it on the moon. So let's start a new craft and begin. Okay, so here we have our large command capsule, and since we're not going to be sending this thing back to Kerbin, we can add the SAS modules here along with a nose cone assembly. Now normally you wouldn't do this because the joining to the various SAS modules is too weak, and if you added a parachute on top of this thing, it would just end up ripping off the whole top part and your capsule would still crash. Okay, so that's where we add our flight control systems, and next we start on the actual moon base part. Now first we add a structural fuselage, because those are gonna be our habitable pods, and then on the bottom of that we add a single fuel tank and one vectoring engine. Now you really want this to be a vectoring engine because you're gonna need the control it gives you. And this will be our final landing stage. This will take us down the last few kilometers to the moon's surface and let us land safely. Now let's go back to structural fuselages and set it on 6x symmetry, and we want to add it as high as possible to make a nice smooth ring around the well, that looks close enough. Actually, let's try and make it a bit closer. Okay, like this. Nice smooth capitation ring around our central part there. So our kerbals would be climbing out of the command pod through that central part and then moving to these central, well, not central so much as, you know, to this second set of. And why won't it join? Like this? No. Why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? Okay, first we need to assemble this, and then we're gonna add. Okay, first assemble it like this, remove that, add this, and then add this or not. Oh, come on. What are you not liking there? God damn it. What is the problem there? Shouldn't be a problem. Okay, maybe I need to do it like this. Okay, let's try it like this. Maybe this works better. God damn it. Yeah, this is a... Okay, we can do it like this. Yes, that's how we need to do it. Add the structural fuselage to the... Attach the structural fuselage to the fuel tank, and then add one on top and one on the bottom there, like that. And then you need to add another set of structural fuselages like this, and they should be aligned with the center of the ship properly, like this. Okay, and these are gonna hold our landing legs, and they're gonna serve as, well, whatever, say, storage rooms. Now then, you want to try and launch it at this point to make sure that the landing legs are not too high and not too low. And we have to wait a second for it to load the launch pad. Okay, now are you loaded yet? Okay, now you're loaded. Now you want to test the landing legs and see just how far off the ground you are when you deploy them. Okay, and some of these side modules are gonna get twisted, so you're gonna need to, you know, make short hop off the ground once you reach the moon, but we're gonna get to that. Okay, now these, well, they look fine, but they could be just a smidge higher, like this. Let's try it now. And really, this will make your life noticeably easier once you get to the moon. And there are some things you do need to test before you actually try to fly the whole mission. Still higher than I would like. Okay. Although, yeah. Actually, with these big landing legs, and they should be the big ones for extra power and such. Okay. Let's try it like this. And don't be afraid to test things as you go, because you will need to make sure to run plenty of tests before you actually try to fly the whole assembly. Okay, so you can add the landing legs however high you want to. Okay, good. Okay, so now what you need to do is add some struts to hold the whole thing together, because as you might have noticed, without them it does wobble a lot. Well, noticeably so anyway. So one set there, you will need that, one set here, and another set from here to the top of the nose cone, like that. And that's our moon base, our actual moon base. Okay. Oh, right, I forgot. And you want to add one more thing, which is a way for our carbonauts to get down from up there if for some reason they should need to exit the moon base. So put it on. One time symmetry and add a set of ladders here. You know, you're gonna need them. Well, you might need them anyway. Either way, it's kind of a nice touch. Okay, so next we're gonna need to add our main engine assembly, and this is gonna take us this is gonna take us from orbit to the moon and most of the way through the landing, and you need to add it on the bottom of this engine in the center here, like that. Then you need to add 2 of these big fuel tanks, and the idea here is to have plenty of fuel reserves, because it can be tricky flying such a big craft and trying to land it, so you'll want to have a big enough margin for error. Then put it on 6 symmetry and select a small hard point and add it here. After that, what you want to do is take one of these smaller fuel tanks and add it on top of the hard point, preferably aligned with one of these outer pods. Then add another one on top here and another one on the bottom, like that. And then add vectoring engines here, and that's our main engine assembly. Okay, then you want to take a set of struts and tie things together here, like that, and another set to tie things together here, like that, and Then what you need to do is take a set of decouplers like this and add, and you want to make sure that the fuel tank is both aligned properly and attached to the decoupler and not the fuel tank there. And you want a set of 3 fuel tanks here along with, and I actually need to raise this craft up higher. Okay, scrolling upwards. Okay, 3 sets of fuel tank. Well, a set of 3 fuel tanks plus one of these large engines here. And since this is a rather heavy ship, I mean these engines have the power to lift you a long way upwards, but they will have trouble accelerating at first, so you're gonna need another set of engines here to help boost it off the ground. And for that we're gonna use solid rocket boosters of the larger variety, these ones here. And it will get a bit tricky here because your ship is so large and it's hard to see things clearly due to the camera limitations, and that is unfortunately unavoidable. And you can move the ship like this, look downwards, and you can move it sideways, so that gives you a bit more freedom. There was an extra part here which shouldn't be there, get rid of that. And yeah, I added a strut here, and I should probably add a strut somewhere here as well. Don't bother with strutting the solid rocket boosters, they won't be around long enough for this to become a problem, but you do need to add a strut here somewhere to tie these outer stages to the inner part here. Preferably, well, you need to tie it to the moon base, not these fuel tanks. Okay, just add a set of struts to tie it to the moon base, and you'll be fine. And now one final touch before we go on to the staging. We add a fuel line from here to here to make sure these outer tanks share their fuel with the main engine assembly, and you know that these are used up fully before these inner tanks are touched. So then we need to move all our sets of 6 engines downwards, and we need to make sure that this engine fires at the same time that this main engine assembly is decoupled, because by that time we are going to be pretty close to the ground and we can't afford to waste any time with confusion due to staging. And then we want to make sure that there are no stages that don't do anything, that every stage is a necessary one, you know. So here we fire all our engines, and you need to hover your mouse over the decouplers to make sure that they are decoupling at the right time. Okay, so here we see that this decoupler is here and this decoupler is here. Excellent. So the solid rocket boosters are spent first, then this outer fuel stage, and then we move on to the main engine assembly, which we get rid of once we are ready to make our final landing approach. So yeah, the ship is ready. Now let's save it just in case the game crashes and try and launch this thing. It's ready for its test flight. Whoa, that's not good. We need to go back to the vehicle assembly building and make sure that it's centered properly on the launch pad, otherwise it's just gonna crash. Yeah, this indicator, this circle here, shows you how the ship will be placed on the launch pad, so we want to move it in the other direction, make sure it's odds, damn it. We want to make sure that's centered properly. Okay, that should be fine. Save again, and let's try this again, shall we? Yeah, and some things won't work the way you expect them to whenever you design stuff, so be ready to do plenty of testing and plenty of small changes. And don't worry about it, it's part of the process. It's all about the step-by-step trial and error refinement of a design until it works properly. And even once it works, you need to keep refining it until it works as perfectly as it can work. Okay, it will lag a bit at first, but that shouldn't be a big problem. Okay, heading far away from the land. We're almost ready to detach our solid fuel boosters. There we go. Now these didn't take us very far, but we really didn't need them to. Bit of a lag spike there, but that's okay. Okay. And you can manage your throttle if you to conserve fuel if you know how and think you need to, but really with how much fuel we have in the main engine assembly, I don't think we are gonna need to. And see, this is not getting spent yet, and that is a good thing. We're gonna need that fuel. Yeah, and you want to start your gravity turn at about, slowly start your gravity turn, mind. You don't want to do it too quickly. You want to start turning your ship at about 12,000 meters or 12 kilometers, and then once you reach 25 or 30, turn towards 45 degrees or so. Whoa. Okay. And at this point we're moving at, yeah, and you cut off your engines when you detach to avoid any problems, because sometimes your ship tends to drift a bit when you detach things, and it can lead to you spinning far out of control if you're not careful. And yeah, and it seems strange that we're already using our main assembly, but you'll see we're gonna have plenty of fuel to get where we're going, and it's not gonna be a problem. And since we're already 70,000 meters up, we're gonna turn towards 90 degrees. Move horizontally. And at this point you probably want to check your trajectory, and in this case it would actually be wise to wait until we're a bit closer to the apoapsis, and you want to burn on this side of the apoapsis but not too far away from it, so you should wait until you're about a minute away from it and then start burning again, provided your apoapsis is high enough, as it is in this case. By the time you get up to 70,000 meters and you've gotten rid of that, of what was the previous stage, you should have an apoapsis of about 130 to 150 kilometers, more or less. Okay. And now we just burn until we hit an orbit, and actually we can just keep burning since we seem to be on a... Actually no, we're gonna get into orbit and then we're gonna wait before trying to shoot for the moon, since our angle isn't as good as it first appears. And this trajectory can be a bit confusing when you're trying to get into orbit, so you should look at your speed. You get into orbit once you reach about 2200 meters per second or so. Like now, we're at 2150 meters per second and we're in a stable, non-decaying orbit. So, yeah, you want to... Yeah, when you're in orbit, you obviously affect the other side of your orbit when you burn. So, if you burn in the direction in which you're already heading, then you push out the other side of your orbit. And when you're aiming for the moon, you want your orbital path to be about 45-60 degrees ahead of the moon. So we should burn right about here. Just aim 45 or 60 degrees ahead of the moon for your transfer burn. Push out, see, we push out our trajectory like this, and it ends up being a bit ahead of the moon, which will allow us to intercept it as it moves on its path. And then, of course, once we get captured by its gravity, we're gonna have to slow ourselves down to get into orbit. And then we're gonna set up our landing, but we'll get to that in a minute or two. And our current mission time is 41 minutes, which is fine. Okay, now you want a nice low perhaps for the moon, and that is a glitch, incidentally. Anyway, ideally you want a moon periapsis of 100 or so, 100 or maybe 50 kilometers, depending on how much room you want to leave yourself. And you should be really careful with the time warp. Time warp glitches and lag spikes have been the cause of many a mission failure. So be really, really careful. When you turn your ship, this thing it can be turned without turning your engines back on, but if you want to turn faster, you might want to give yourself just a tiny bit of engine power to help with the turn. Anyway, we're gonna bring our periapsis down to... Ideally you would bring your periapsis down to about 50 kilometers on both sides, and then once you're on the opposite side of your orbit from where you want to land, you would bring it into... well, I would bring it into about 20 kilometers or so, maybe 10, and then go for a landing by just getting rid of my lateral speed and coming straight down. So that's actually what we're gonna try and do here. We're gonna bring our orbit down to about 50 kilometers, and then we're gonna set up our approach. And as you can see, my orbit is changing because I've turned on my engines to help with the turn. Now when you're turning a ship based on engine power, you can do this. You turn the engines on just a bit, turn your ship, then once your ship is pointing more or less in the right direction, you give it more engine power to stabilize your heading. Like this. And we want to bring this in a little bit more till it's about like that. Now we're gonna aim for this crater here, right here. So once we reach the opposite side of our orbit, I'm gonna bring this side in to about 20,000, I think. You can of course do it differently. Let's check on our fuel actually, because as you can see we still have most of this fuel tank and one full set of fuel tanks here, so we still have plenty of fuel. So yeah, there's plenty of reserves here and nothing to worry about. Okay, yes, you're actually no, this guy is enjoying himself. Now we want to okay, how yes, that will do. Okay. Okay, we've brought our periapsis in, and now okay, and we're off center for our target. So what you want to do here is you can burn either northwards or southwards to change your orbital path in that direction, but you have to do it when you're less than 90 degrees away from it. Okay, see, our path changes, but the opposite side of our orbit stays at the same place. So, you know, if you burn when you're on the opposite side of the orbit, it won't change the point you're aiming for. You have, and if you're more than 180 degrees away on your orbit, then it will change it in the opposite direction. You know, if I wanted to change this side of the orbit upwards, I would have to burn downwards here. But right now it's doing more or less what we wanted. Now gonna wait till our periapsis, and then we're gonna start our landing burn. Okay, few leg spikes. Okay, at this point you no longer want to look at the map view unless you're trying to land next to something, which, unless you have a bit of experience with this, I don't recommend. So, you know, no more map view. Okay, we're turning in the wrong direction actually. Oh, and there's Kerbin. Okay, turn around, and we're starting to climb again. But our engines are gonna fix that soon enough. Burn more. Need to get rid of this speed. There we go. Now you do have a lot of fuel, but you still don't want to slow down too quickly. Actually, yeah, you want to see how far you've changed your orbit horizontally, so you might want to take a quick peek at the map view. But, you know, don't overdo it. Okay. Now this ship will be clumsy, so you need to be careful and think every move through carefully. Now, what you want to do is get rid of all of your lateral speed before you get too close to the ground, and then just keep yourself moving down perfectly vertically. And the first thing you want to do when aiming for that is switch this indicator here, which shows your speed, from the orbital to the surface speed by clicking on it, like this. And yeah, we're heading downwards at an angle. So I'm gonna burn here, and I'm gonna get rid of the rest of this speed and keep burning sideways until this indicator points straight upwards. And what you want to do is you want to burn a little more. Oh god, how do I explain this? You want to move your heading to aim for this, but aim a little more horizontally, because in order to push this indicator away towards the straight up marker, right? Like, this is your retrograde marker, means you're aiming in the direction opposite your direction of movement. So when you burn, when you aim at the when you burn without aiming at it directly, your engine sort of push it away from your heading, like this. See it moves away from whichever direction we're thrusting, and whoa, that's a bit too much. Please don't crash. See, we're sort of pushing it away from us. So you want to be on the same angle as it, but you want to burn a little more horizontally than it. That's how you adjust. You sort of offset your heading closer to the 90-degree angle than it is, by just a bit. That sort of pushes it away from you. Okay. I hope you understood that. Okay, now we've gotten rid of our lateral or horizontal speed, more or less, and now all that's left are tiny adjustments as we manage our speed on the way down. Now we're 8,000 meters up, so we don't want to slow too much. Now this is pretty powerful rocket, so you want to bring your speed down once you're below 5,000 meters. At that point you want to move at less than 100 meters per second. Above that, just keep it at less than 250 and you should be fine. But feel free to do the descent any way you wish, and incidentally, you shouldn't be trying this if you haven't landed on the moon before with a normal lander, because this is significantly more difficult. Okay, now we're getting close. At some point, once we get really close, we're gonna burn off the rest of our speed. We're gonna get rid of this stage and switch to our final landing engine. We don't want to do this while we're too high up, but at the same time we want to make sure that this engine explodes hard enough on the contact with the ground to fly, for all the pieces to fly far away from the spot where we're landing. And this looks like a good enough height to actually do it. Okay, now we're gonna give ourselves a slight upwards movement here, and we're gonna get rid of that and move ourselves a bit away from this with our final engine. And at this point you want to be really careful, because you will only have a single fuel tank to make this work, so don't screw it up. Okay, now next thing you want to do is watch this thing, especially the marker for how far away from you it is. You need to, this will give you some idea how far away from the ground you actually are when it explodes. Now what we want to do is we want to see just what distance this marker shows when it explodes. That will give us an idea as to how far away from the ground we are at that exact point. Okay, and this engine was powerful enough to just barely lift us off the ground on Kerbin. Here on the moon, where the gravity is significantly lower, it will do a lot more, and you still want to keep your speed below 100 meters per second. Actually, once you're this low down, you want to keep it a lot lower. Okay, we're 500 meters away from the ground, which means we need to slow down now. Okay, we've slowed ourselves down, and now we need to manage our speed carefully and try to, ideally you would come to a near complete stop just as your landing legs touch the ground, but you want to keep moving downwards until you're within a couple of 100 meters off the ground, and then you want to drift down really carefully. Now well, that's the thing, you have a single fuel tank, so you need to get close to the ground before you detach your main engine assembly. But at the same time, well, that's the thing, you need to be really careful, because this is the part where you could really screw this up, because you only have a single fuel tank and at the same time you need to be careful so that you don't crash. But I've managed to avoid that, and I've landed my moon base. So now you want to retract your landing legs, settle it on the ground, and some of the parts might get twisted, so what you want to do is add just enough engine power to gently lift yourself off the ground and come straight back down again. That gives your moon base a chance to straighten out all its parts and settle down properly. And that's it, you've landed. And this ends our moon base tutorial.